Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Have you ever had like these successful moments in your life, in your business? Things are going great, but you're kind of like just not feeling like the success is really driving you anymore. It's more of that like you're kind of feeling miserable about the process in some capacity, or it's just dragging you down every day. It's like a weight, drag, 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 drag. Do you know how much this impacts your bottom line financially and the longevity of the business? Well, if you didn't know, Jim Brown's here today, and Jim and I are going to talk about this concept. Get a pen, get a paper, and write down some notes because if you're in that place or you know someone who's in that place, trust me, this is eating away at your EBITDA and eating away at your margins left and right, and you just don't realize it's just that kind of that silent killer that's going on in the business. So, Jim, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here today, sir.
So good to be with you, Doug. I love what you're doing with your show and excited for the conversation because you're talking to people who are making a difference in hundreds of people's, thousands of people's lives. Uh, and our conversation can help them be more impactful, frankly, happier with their own life. And by the way, that's all going to pay off quite well.
Yeah, and folks, those some most of you are business owners listening to this. Some of you may not own a business or have employees, but or you might be a entrepreneur. But whatever you're doing, understand that what you're doing impacts and affects other people on a daily, sometimes even hourly basis, right? And if we're not playing to our fullest, it's kind of like you got a second family and you're not really like taking care of that family. And I know that's I'm laying guilt on you here, but the reality is there are a lot of people who depend on you to do what you're doing for them and with them.
That's
So,
for sure. And sometimes that weight actually becomes heavy for people.
mm,
And the only answer to this, Doug, is that you get people around you who help carry some of that weight. And you create the kind of trusting relationships in that. And that, sure, that could be your leadership team, but it in this case of the solopreneur, it just could be some really important suppliers or even clients that there's just a click when they work together, and it
yeah.
makes every day better.
So I want to back you up what you're saying here, Jim, because at one time I had a business and we grew it to $1 million in its first year. And we weren't killing it, but I was making around 190 grand a year. Not bad, especially back then, because there was 190 that went a lot further than it does today. And but the business was just dragging on me in a daily emotional grind. And I was waking up and I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And someone once said to me, and here's the crazy part, the business was absolutely going to double or triple the following year. It was already in the numbers. And so, which meant my income would double or triple as well,
Right.
right?
Or
So,
more, or
yeah,
more, because there's scale.
yeah, exactly. And it was small enough so that scale would have been high profit. And a friend of mine once said to me, he said, look, Doug, I can see what kind of drag is coming down on you. He's like, if we could restructure the business so it's not the way it is today, and you could have your job function and you could do the business different, it was off your back, so to speak, right? Um, why don't we do that? And I looked at him and I said, no, I don't want to do that, right? When I look back on that decision, it cost me $3.5 million.
Ouch.
Right? Because that business, because it was a recurring revenue business in itself, it paid me $1.2 million over the next 9 years till it attrited
Okay.
out.
Yeah.
But if I had a built that up and I had a grown that 1.2 million would have been 3.4 million in my pocket, right? So additional above and beyond the 1.2 that
Right.
I got out of it. So folks, if that doesn't wake you up a little bit, some of you have much bigger businesses than $1 million company. So, Jim, why do people get to this place? Like you've been doing this. Firstly, the company's name is Why don't
Orc
you?
Health.
There
We
you
go by
go.
Orc Health. Our website is orchealthteam.com. Yeah, I've been leading this consulting practice for over 30 years.
And you're working with business owners all the time who are running into this. And I would say the majority of time, business can feel heavy on us from time to time. But when it really
Yep.
starts dragging on you, you start making decisions, folks, in different ways that you wouldn't normally. Like, how dumb was I, right? I could have brought a team in, like you said, Jim. I could have brought other people in. I had the money. I could have brought a team in, scaled that business up. It might have sold off. I might have got 5x for revenue on that company by the time I was done. So that makes me a little sad to think that I probably, if I grew it to 5 million bucks, I could have got 15 for it. So, but why does this happen? I think I know, but you're an expert in this domain. So why does this happen? And does it happen overnight or does it happen slowly?
I've, as I said, I've been doing this with leaders for over 30 years. Let me tell you a story. I'm thinking
Please.
of a guy who built a fast-growing company, and he was known for always having the answer. He had efficient meetings, fast decisions, strong results, but then a key customer churned, and the reason surprised him. Now, his team, they could see the risk for months before this, but nobody pushed back. They assumed that he already had thought this through or he didn't want to hear it. At the very next meeting, he did something different. He began the meeting by saying, "Hey, here's what I missed, and here's what I need your help with." And that changed the room, Doug.
Hmm.
That made it so that people on the team spoke sooner, problems surfaced earlier, decisions got better. This is when he realized that his confidence had been costing him trust. And trust was the real constraint to growth of his business. This is all part of what in our company we call the Ascent operating system.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what is the pathway for leaders to create businesses that are really impactful, really successful, really valuable.
So let's go to this confidence drop thing, right? Because confidence drops, they're the leader, the people, I was in the military for 12 years, right? I mean, sometimes they ask you to do some of the things that are just not logical.
Yes. Yes.
But if you have a leader leading you through that process, it's like the brain goes, okay, we're a team here. We got somebody leading us through the process. But if we went into that same scenario and the leader was like, oh no, I don't know if we're gonna make it out of this one,
Mm.
you'd be sitting there going, I'm not going through this, right? I'm dropping. So that trust level is so important in leadership, I find.
Yeah.
Um,
And you're raising an important point, Doug. Let me chase after this. When I talked about confidence, I wasn't suggesting that you show up clueless or fearful. I'm saying show up with open arms, as in I I know some things, but I know I don't know everything. And there's nobody in this room that's smarter than everybody in this room. So let's make sure that we're bringing our best thinking to the table. See, this guy, and I've worked with 100 of these kinds of people, they think they're supposed to have all the answers.
yeah.
And what I've discovered, this is really critical. Leaders don't need to have all the answers. What they need is better questions. Questions that make it safe for the best people on your team to bring their best ideas so that now you're making decisions about the best information.
So I have to ask this in this capacity because to me, this kind of probably stems from childhood, right? And so, I mean, if we take a child and a child wants something, they ask questions. They
Yep.
don't even think about it. It's like, why does this butterfly fly this way? Like, what is this? Like they're curious and they ask questions, or if they want something, they ask for it. Hey,
Yeah.
I need my sippy cup or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
Or pay attention to me, right? They're asking questions. And so it's a natural thing we do as a child, but then as we start to get conditioned through human conditioning, we sort of get that beat out of us in some ways, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, well, if you don't know the answer to this, you're stupid. I
Right.
mean, look, you get a test back. It's got all these red knocks on the test, right? You only got a 70. Well, you got 70 out of 100 right and 30 wrong. Like you're ahead of the game, right? But
Yeah, but
psychologically,
you're told you were wrong.
yeah,
And think about this in grade 3. You put your hand up, you share what you think is the answer, and the teacher says, "No, that's wrong."
yeah,
And half the people in the room laugh.
yeah,
But everyone else in the room is thinking, "Oh, I would be stupid to answer a question because I might be wrong and I would look bad."
yeah,
Or sometimes I would be stupid to ask a question because the teacher might say, "I already told you what that is," and they'll look stupid and everybody laughs. Unintentionally, our Western world, at least, has created this way of being that makes it unsafe to bring your thinking and your questions. And that has impacted leaders to the point that they think that they can't be vulnerable. They can't let their people see what their questions are, what their mistakes were, what their flaws are. And here's the scary reality. They already know.
yeah,
People already see it. The only thing that we're talking about is our self-awareness. That's what they're not sure about. Because when we are not admitting that we made a mistake, they're all thinking, wait, he doesn't even know that he made a mistake? Or he's so proud he can't own that? I don't know how to work with people like that. And that's bad.
better questions aren't revealing our insecurities per se. Better questions are discovering things that will support our insecurities without even bringing them up.
And better questions will make everyone in the room engage in the kind of conversation that moves us forward. And
Yes.
that feels better for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. We all want to be in an environment that feels nurturing and that, you're not saying we got to sit and hold hands and meditate together. What we're saying is the leader's job is to grow the company through the talent as well of who the people they already have or will bring to the company.
Yeah.
And that leader has to be somewhat willing to put their ego on the block for the moment and understand that they don't, understand that other people can bring that value. And they know this conceptually, most of the people, Jim, that I've ever talked with. But I still think, to your point, no one wants to look foolish or not have the answer. And they think that leadership is always having that answer.
Yeah.
And that's where I see owners of companies get into big challenge mode. I'll give an example. I just have a client that I was working with, and their revenue in their business has dropped almost by 3x.
Oh my.
And when I was questioning the client, they knew it was happening. They could see
How,
it was happening,
how could you not notice that? Yeah.
but they know the reason why it was happening and they still
Oh.
didn't fix it.
Oh.
And so what ended up happening was market share was now being pulled from them from other competitors in the market. And instead of going back and doing the simple fixes, which is what I asked them, hey, if we just did these simple fixes on your revenue, what will happen? And they go, well, we'll jump by 10%.
Uh-huh.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, why didn't you do that when you were 3 times what you were, right?
Mm.
And it was like stunned silence in the room because no one wanted to take ownership for that, even though everyone knows who took ownership for that, right? So I think, to your point, if they were asking better questions and getting that feedback, but allowing their ego not to be so invested in being right all the time, it's kind of like flying a plane toward a mountain in some regards and saying, that mountain will move.
Right. Right.
Because I'm right. I'm certain on this thing, right? Um, so how do they get themselves, what's the first step or stage to getting themselves out of that focused state that they're going to be flying toward the mountain?
Sure. Well, you're touching on this operating system I talked about before. The first step is really some self-diagnosis. It's like, let's look at our situation, my leadership. What are some things that are happening with the way that I'm showing up? And here's a punchy statement for you. Real leadership begins the moment you stop pretending. We think that showing up strong and confident is what people want, and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable is weakness. Maybe that was true 25 years ago, but I promise you it is not true now, Doug. Right now, people want to believe they're working with authentic humans
Mm,
as leaders, not pretend whatever generals. I'm always right and we're always going to win. And we're going to go down fighting. Okay. Or could we just talk about what's happening? Because, by the way, we all see more than you see. And you've probably heard this 100 times. The leader is the last one to hear what's really happening
mm.
because people are scared to tell them what they might not want to hear. Well, that means they are not dealing with reality. And you cannot lead if you don't see reality.
Jim, we used to do these presentations in front of the whole company. We do a deep dive diagnostic in a company that I was running. And the first slide that would come up is some of the things the CEO doesn't think they want to hear.
Uh-huh. Good.
Right?
Yeah.
But it was all told from all the interviews we did internally.
Great. Yes.
And it was eye-opening for a lot of the executive staff
I
because
bet.
it was things that the executive staff knew anyways, but they didn't think that the 300 employees in that company actually knew what they already knew, right? So it kind of like solidified the process of getting everybody on the same page of what these things are. So to your point, people already tend to know what's going on, but they're fearful to speak up in an environment where it's not fostered that they can speak up without retribution or judgment, so to speak, right?
100% agree, Doug. And what you're describing is really that they see something, but they're avoiding it. That
Yeah.
happens from every level. Like CEOs, they see someone on the team isn't pulling their weight, but they don't deal with it. Someone on the leadership team sees a problem that's happening. Like, go back to the story I started with. The problem, the reason that that company had lost this key customer was the CEO was insisting as they were building their product, there were certain key features that he really thought were what needed to be there, but the key client no longer cared about those things.
Mm.
And rather than listening to the client to make sure that their needs were being met, no, it's full steam ahead on my plan. And they lost the person, they lost that account. And the people knew it, but they weren't bringing it up. Here's the statement we need to get clear. Avoidance is culture's biggest threat.
Mm.
If we're avoiding issues, it's like a cancer in our culture.
Yeah, and look, sometimes avoiding issues, they just go away by themselves, but in business, most of the time they don't.
They
And that,
usually fester.
yeah, exactly. And it's interesting you know, the what you were saying because folks, what I want you to get out of this is that this directly affects the money in your company. How, right? So if leaders are the last one to know, and I think I'd be a little contrary on that point. I think they know, but they're kind of sometimes the last ones to admit it.
Maybe, maybe. Yeah.
And it could be either or. But folks, think about this. If your organization is stifling the ability for people to take charge and do things, so we're stifling innovation at that point,
Uh-huh.
okay? We're having low accountability happening to daily things that are supposed to be happening. And it's also stifling the will to go the extra mile for the client.
Right.
So we're creating a marginalized service at that point. And so if we have marginalized service, then people are going to commoditize us because they're going to look at us and go, huh, Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, Whataburger, they're all burgers. I don't know which one is differentiated. If there's lack of accountability, well, things get dropped. How about follow up in your company? There's no, or getting back to the key clients, or just delivering on what you say you were going to on time, right? Those type of things. In
Yeah.
innovation, man, when you stifle innovation, you stop growing. And so you start to lose market share. And by the way, that's what was happening with the client that I was explaining.
Yes.
Um, and all of this just eats away at your funding, eats away at your finance. It eats away at the revenue coming in, the margins, collected revenue that's not collected. All of these things happen because of what Jim and I are talking about. Um, all right, so Jim, that was the step. What after all this kind of what's the old term? The cat's out of the bag, so to speak, or what,
Yeah.
after all this information comes forth, what's the next step?
When leaders accept their imperfection and show up as the leader, not the I'm smarter than everyone in the room, I've got all the answers, but rather I believe in you, and together we're going to really make a difference in the world. They're bringing the best out of their people. Culture is a performance multiplier. And CEOs, too often, they think of culture as this thing that HR is supposed to take care of. No, I'm pushing on this one, Doug. I'm saying culture is the most important factor in whether a company is going to really become valuable. Because if it's up to you, if you're the smartest person in the company, if you've got all the answers, you are the bottleneck. And the way you and I talk about this, we use that term key man risk. I've seen so many $50 million companies that are unsellable
Hmm.
because it depends so much on the leader of the company
Yeah.
that no one's going to buy the company. It's not going to work without that leader.
Yeah, it's the old Doc Potter story that Doc Potter's the physician that everybody knows. You remove Doc Potter out of the medical practice, you essentially don't have a medical practice that
Right.
is
Yeah.
viable. Um,
So those leaders need to stop being the hero and start empowering, enabling all of the people on their team to be the ones that are making the results. This is the first step that we can take as leaders is stop being the doer and really focus on being the leader.
yeah. Yeah, and if we're stifling the going the extra mile, or we're stifling the decision-making process, then it elongates decisions that could have been made that would have brought a lot more money into the company prior to, right? So I know I've worked in certain organizations, of the size you're talking and above, and as they get bigger, they got more political, and sometimes decisions take 4 months. And it's
Yeah,
like, whoa, okay. And then once the decision's made, we made $100 million. And I'm like, so, we just lost 4 months of $100 million because we could have made that decision in the first day, right?
right,
That type of thing.
right.
So,
Hey, I'm just thinking of a story. In my book, The Imperfect CEO, I talk about an account I worked with quite a few years ago, and it was a country operations of a global enterprise, and they'd been told, uh, "You are the highest cost manufacturer in our system. If you don't get this turned around, we're going to mothball the plant. And this was going to be, I forget, it's something like 700 employees would be on the street. Well, they took this seriously and they started to really work together so that departments wouldn't be fighting for resources. The leaders of those departments worked together to figure out what's the biggest problem we need to solve this week to move this forward. And if that means I need to send 20 people from my department to your department to help make that happen,
Mm.
I'm doing it. If that means that I have to let go of some of the budget that was allocated to my department so that we can do this change that really will move us forward, we're doing it. In 1 year, they went from being the highest cost producer to the lowest cost producer. This kind of cultural change and collaboration, this is what you're talking about. This is how do you drive EBITDA up? You make it so that everyone's bringing their best value and making the biggest impact on the bottom line. When we can get profit to be high and predictably high, and even better, accelerating at a predictable level, now we start to talk about multiples going up. This makes a huge impact on value.
Yeah, it's I like the part about accelerating at the end because if you can accelerate predictability, then you're really getting compounding out of that whole process. So,
Yeah. I've been on the board of a bunch of different early stage technology companies,
mhm.
and every one of those boards, we harp on MRR, monthly recurring revenue.
Yep.
We want to see that hit a threshold that proves product fit, and then we want to see that predictably accelerating. And the more that we can show, look, we never go below X on a month-to-month basis, and actually it's increasing at a 12% rate per month.
Right.
Now we are really showing the world some potential.
So, Jim, I think I'd like to end on that, but I want to give people a chance to kind of get to know you better and figure out where you are. So, what's some of the ways that people can, get a hold of Jim Brown direct?
Sure. Well, first understand that my passion is to work with leaders that are really committed to making a difference in their organizations. So what I love is to have conversations with people. If you've got listeners and they're thinking, this stuff matters and maybe I can do something, I sure hope that they buy a copy of the book. And if they went to imperfectceobook.com, they'll find some incredible packages that we've got offered before the launch, which is May 19th, to do some bulk orders of the books. But some of your listeners, they don't want to wait till March. They or to May, sorry, May 19th. They want something for Monday. And if they direct message me on LinkedIn, it's at author Jim Brown. Just send me the keyword ascent, ASCENT, and we will actually send directly a PDF of our Ascent operating system. This is, it includes the model of how the leadership works and a diagnostic to help them really understand what's happening and a roadmap to see how they can move forward. So again, it's at author Jim Brown. Direct message me on LinkedIn. We'll get that resource sent out to them.
Jim, last question. You had mentioned that, leaders, they've got to see themselves kind of where their soft spots are, if you will, in
Yeah,
themselves, right? I can hear the alpha type going, yeah, that's kind of mamby-pamby, touchy-feely, that type of thing. So in closing, how does one stay keep that, well, let's just call it what it is, the ego intact, so they don't have to feel like they're being lesser than themselves, but at the same time, accomplishing what we were talking about on this.
yeah. As leaders, if we focus on progress rather than polish, it's always going to pay off. So rather than us trying to project a image that is so great, no, just focus on getting incredible results, not personally, but as a company. Focus on leading your organization and especially your core team to get results. You're not the doer, you are the leader. And everyone is going to give you credit when the whole company prospers. We just need to admit we're not perfect. Everyone knows we're not perfect. They're wondering if we realize we're not perfect. So let's accept it and then cheer the people forward as they get results. It's all going to reflect positively on us.
And the last thing I'd like to add to that, Jim, is our imperfections, folk, also make us part of what makes us perfect at the same time.
That's the truth. That's the truth. And if we've done a good job of building the right kind of team, we've attracted people who have strengths that cover our weaknesses.
Absolutely.
And we invite them to do that. We admit, hey, I'm not very good at that. Sally, can you step in and cover this? Because you're way better at this. That makes Sally feel good, but it makes everyone else around the table feel like, oh, I think there's probably a place for me here.
Agreed. Jim, thanks for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. So much. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Doug. Wonderful conversation. Good to be with you.
All right, all right. Hey, this was great. Listen, be a doer, not a leader. I wanted to bring Jim on here because sometimes we forget as business owners that our brains actually are driving the business. Our brains, our thoughts, all of this. And I have seen over and over where the leader gets in this kind of funk, right? Their thought funk, if you will, and they start focusing in areas that as things are starting to grow and stressed and test the internal boundaries of that leader's thought process, sometimes they go in the opposite direction that they should be going in. So I want to give a few skills and a couple of ways to start thinking about this. And if you're in that place where you're having success and you're stressed, um, and maybe it's caused by the business itself, and maybe it's caused by the people in the business, right? Because I always joke and I say, hey, business is so easy until you add people, right? But if you're in that place where you're growing or you're kind of stuck even, and you think it's the business itself, well, we offer here a diagnostic process to uncover that hidden revenue, that money you've already spent, the revenue sitting in the company. I'm not talking about uncollected revenue per se, as far as like being over 90 days or 180 days. I'm talking about that money that's sitting there, maybe in pricing that should have been adjusted, maybe in the follow-up components of the business, maybe in the lack of, we've got a higher refund rate than we're supposed to, or not a high enough engagement rate. Those type of things that you already paid out all of that money to actually get the client through the door, but it's just sitting there like a dormant client sitting there. If you want to find out if that's happening to you, because what I have found is there's usually somewhere between 15 and 25% of revenue that's sitting there uncollected. Reach out to me directly at Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com, and we'll have that conversation. And if we feel it's a need between the two of us, then we can take it to the next step. Identify where all those places are in your business, and then go collect that money for you. It's super high margin business. Get the cash in at super high margins. So, as always, I want you to look at your business and I want you to figure out, where is this money hiding in your business? But as important, you've got to focus on continuing sales. So, as always, I say, go out and sell something today, sell a lot of it, make it super win-win-win. They win, you win, other people win. It's the greatest type of business going. If you like this episode or any of the episodes, I ask you please to give it a 5-star review. And if you'd like to reach out to me again directly, it's Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com. This is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. To your success.